Lawrence, here we are at your beloved Stamford Bridge. Sporting Club have taken over for the evening, and of course you're here starring as our guest for our dinner tonight. But of course, it's the night before the Rugby World Cup, and so much to talk about. We'll try and cram it in a few minutes. First of all, we've got to start with England. On the face of it, as bad a warm-up, bad as preparation as you could possibly get. Lost nearly all of their matches except one. The captain's out for again a high tackle, other injuries, and they're up against a very tricky Argentina. However, it doesn't always work like that, does it? Pre-World Cup's not the same as World Cup.
No, listen, it's not been a great build-up. I can't dress it up any other way, but we're still excited about it because England have got no form coming into the tournament, but they have got previous form with some experienced and quality players, and win the first game against, as you say, a very strong Argentina team. So it won't be an easy game. This is a very, very tough game. But win that, and there's a complete momentum shift. The narrative changes from the problems they've had leading up to the tournament to actually England could win the group, it could end up in a quarter-final, and then they're suddenly in a very different place. There is a group of coaches that are working exceptionally hard. I've no doubt about that. When you look at the England team, you think, if they named the World 15 today, we wouldn't have that many players in it. In fact, I don't think we, on form, have any world-class players at the moment. But what we have is a group of experienced players, some of whom are going to their fourth World Cup, who have been in the winning circle, and they understand the mindset needed and required for these big occasions. So if our leaders and our big players stand up, minus Owen Farrell, and they play a big performance, which is what it's going to need, then they've got every chance of winning that game. So I'm one of those people, as you know, very positive. I've had to be honest in my assessments. I've peeled back my own expectations of England in this tournament, and we can talk about knockout stages, but the most important thing is that they just turn up and win that first game. And if they do that, then everything changes.
If they don't, however, it's going to be hard. They should still get through the group.
Well, they should get through the group. I mean, listen, this team are incredibly well motivated. I've no doubt about that. We don't hear from them very often, so it's hard to know exactly what's going on. But this is an England side that less than 12 months ago were beaten by Argentina at Twickenham. So they understand the team they're playing against. They should have that little bit of anger, that little bit of motivation, hopefully that little bit of excitement as well, because some of these players are playing in their first World Cup. Opening games are not easy for any side.
You've just got to win them.
There's a bit of nerves, there's a bit of tension. Sure. Even the most experienced players, we played Georgia in our opening game in 2003, and Georgia weren't the side they are now. So it's a tough game, but maybe it's exactly what England need. It's a game that they need to remind themselves how good they are, to remind all the teams at the World Cup that they're actually a very good side, and to remind everyone watching at home that they've got a team that they can cheer on in this tournament.
Two straws to clutch on. Number one is you were part of we'll talk about 2003 shortly, but you were also part of that 2007 squad, which was also pretty disastrous leading up to the World Cup, indeed even at the World Cup. In the group stages, obviously 36-0 against South Africa, and that's when the players took over, took control, and you were a few inches away from scoring the winning try in the World Cup final. So that's one positive. Another positive is that, weirdly, because I think it's ludicrous, but it is what it is, they're on a much easier side of the World Cup draw. So are those two positives we can hang on to?
I mean, obviously, inevitably, there's comparisons between 2007 and this World Cup. I mean, I'm not quite sure about that because this group of players haven't actually played a World Cup game yet. So let's not make any comparisons just yet. If they win their game, their first game, then let's see where it takes us. We could be talking about a completely different narrative. Their form, so yes, I mean, I think there is a positive because maybe England have done that wonderful thing and saved their best rugby for the tournament itself. Maybe they have lulled everyone into a full sense of security. I hope their opponents will underestimate them, and they'll spring a few surprises. They've also got a little injection, whether they wanted it or not, of new players. So Johnny May, who's been around a long time, probably didn't expect to be in the World Cup or the starting lineup. Alex Mitchell, it's amazing how things and fortunes of a player can change, but maybe there's clearly been a different mindset in terms of the speed of the game, because you wouldn't play Alex Mitchell unless you wanted to speed up the game a little bit more. So I think there are positives, and the positives I have is I look at Jamie George, I look at Mario Itoje, I look at Tom Curry, I look at George Ford, and I look at Tuilagi. These are all players who, at various points in their career, have delivered world-class performances. The only issue is we haven't seen them for a little while, but that doesn't mean they're not there.
Yeah.
And I think if they can all summon those sorts of performances together collectively, then we've got more than enough to cause Argentina problems.
On the other side of the draw, of course, you've got the current Big Four. Most people think the World Cup champions will come from one of these four, but two of them are going to be out after the quarterfinals, which is bizarre.
The draw is the draw, okay? Everyone's moaning about it, but the reality is, that two of those teams have improved greatly over the last 4 years. So, that's why they're on the same side of the draw, because, they weren't in the equation, 4
France
years ago.
and Ireland.
France and Ireland are now numbers 1 and 2. Look,
Yeah.
I mean, every one of those guys has got a chance. As we know, 6 of the 9 World Cups to date have been won by 2 of those teams, New Zealand and South Africa. So please don't tell me that they're not in the equation, because the bookmakers will tell you otherwise. France have been the bridesmaid, never the bride, but they have never had a better chance of winning. They are the home nation. Home advantage is enormous. England won a Cricket World Cup here with home advantage. We won a Football World Cup with home advantage. So it is possible, and they are looking very, very strong. They've only lost 1 game in the last 4 years in Paris. I mean, I think that was to a Scotland side, wasn't it? Or yes, I think it was. So they are incredibly formidable. They have the best player in the world in Dupont, and despite a couple of injuries that they wouldn't have wanted and coming into the tournament, they're still very strong. So look, it's a shame that 2 of those teams are going to go out. But on the other side of it, if you're England, Wales, Fiji, Australia, whoever, you're thinking, or Argentina, you've got a great chance.
Who's going to win?
Last time round, I thought South Africa, and it proved to be the case, even though they lost their first game. So this opening game tomorrow night, New Zealand, France, amazing. Whoever loses, make no mistake, they can still go on and win the World Cup. So it's not a disaster. Obviously, I'd love to be talking about England as potential winners, but I think they're going to have to come from so far off the rails that, and they're going to need a bit of help. Ireland are my kind of second team because of my heritage, because Italy, let's face it, will look good, but they haven't got a chance of winning. And who do I think will win? Hand on heart, Ireland I want to win, but I think the winner will come from either France or South Africa. France because they're hosts, South Africa because they're holders.
Okay, now, you know something about winning Rugby World Cups. In fact, one of the many stats about you, Lawrence, is that you're the only member of the England squad in 2003 who played every single minute of that campaign. It's 20 years on, I mean, that's, I don't know how you can, does it really feel like 20 years? I know you've been talking about it a lot this year, obviously, with all the team. Still as special as ever after all this time?
Yeah, I think, look, it was an incredible journey. Don't forget I played.
It wasn't overnight.
I played in 3 World Cups. Lost in '99 and some painful lessons. The RFU retained faith in Clive Woodward after 2 years, and he retained faith in some of the players, and we moved forward. Amazing journey, really, from about 2000 to 2003. It felt like we really knew what we were doing, and I managed to reconnect with all of those players because I was fascinated by that journey. We were all in the right place at the right time. We all came together, and since then our lives have gone in different directions. So as a kind of look down memory lane and as a journey of discovery for myself, as you said, I played every minute of every game, but actually not every player did that. So that's the book. It's called The Boys of Winter, and it's really in 2 parts. The first part is getting 31 different versions, plus a few of the management, so maybe nearly 40 versions of what actually happened, about the 9 weeks that we spent in Sydney together, which is interesting because it's unearthed a few gems that I didn't know happened. I played in every minute, so I thought it was a really good tournament, but if you're a player who only played 1 or 2 games, you had a very different 9 weeks.
Sure.
The second part of the book, which I think is really fascinating, is was it a good thing we won, and how did it change your life?
And that's answered differently
by different
I guess.
people. Because don't forget, this team that won this World Cup was never the same again.
Sure.
From the minute we walked out of that dressing room as World Cup winners, life changed for everyone. Johnny Wilkinson didn't play for England for 3.5 years after that drop goal. Martin Johnson retired the following day, and a lot of guys were just mentally and physically and emotionally, exhausted, and we would like to go back and play for our club. So
a week later.
Yeah, and listen, England have been in 2 subsequent World Cup finals, and this is not me going, look how good we used to be. it's part of it is a legacy of, we had a great side, we achieved something very special together. There's a lot of disappointment, especially amongst this group, that we have never built on that legacy. We've had the odd spike where we've been in a final, but this should have been the start of something a bit better and a bit more significant.
Can you explain why that team was so good? What makes a team a World Cup winning team?
Well, I think there was a group of players and a group of managers led by Clive Woodward. We would never have won the World Cup without Clive Woodward. I mean, that is fact. And a lot gets spoken and said. Clive wasn't the only reason we won it, but he was definitely the main reason, the driving reason, because he completely changed the direction of travel of England and a rugby nation. I think what's really fascinating is that naturally there's a few disappointments along the way. There's a learning process. I think to be a successful team, you need two things, if I could sum it up. You need Jason Robinson and Johnny Wilkinson, really, don't you? But there's lots of reasons why we won, okay? Yeah. And I can't pinpoint one and say that was the only one. Clive persuaded the CFO of the RFU to spend money on Jason Robinson. That was a big risk. Yeah. It was a gamble, but it paid off. Would we have won without him? I don't know. Probably not. Johnny Wilkinson, we got him fit in a World Cup final. Would we have won without him? Yeah. Who knows? The two things that underpin any successful side is trust and consistency. We had a group of coaches that trusted us as players, trusted us that if we pushed back, it was the right thing to do.
You had loads of leaders, didn't you, as
well?
well?
But we had consistency.
Yeah.
We were consistent with the messaging, we built on that, and then we made it better. We had a group of coaches that were very, very talented, but equally very difficult to manage, which is fine. Clive did a great job of that. And it didn't happen overnight. We earned it. We earned it the hard way. We focused our minds on, if you want to win a World Cup, you have to focus yourself on beating the sides that win it, which is New Zealand, South Africa and Australia. So in the Northern Hemisphere, we were obsessed, quite rightly, with winning the 5-6 Nations title, but that ain't going to win you a World Cup. And I think what Clive did is he fundamentally changed the direction of England's objective and said, if we want to be the best side in the world, we're going to have to measure ourselves against the very best. Now, I think the playing field has changed now. I think the likes of France, Ireland have recognised that and now measure, but they don't measure themselves against England, they measure themselves against the very best sides in the world.
Sure. 20 years on, if you see any of your teammates, which I'm sure you do quite a bit, is there that instant connection? You just look at each other and almost a nod?
I think what you recognise is that we've only ever been together once before as a group, and that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And now this will be the same again, because we all arrived on a journey in Sydney, but we all came at it from different directions. Our why we play rugby was all very different, our motivation was different, and we all have got that in common now. We'll always have that, and that's very, very special. I'm not sure we'd meet up if we lost, would you? I'm not sure it'd be quite the same sort of feeling. Yeah. So there's inevitably, there is that emotional connection because you've been to places, good and bad, with that group, and you've ultimately got to the top of Everest and achieved what you wanted to achieve. But what I would have wished for, even more than that, is that other England players experience that same feeling. Because trust me, I've been in a losing World Cup dressing room as well, where it was my last game of international rugby, and the scenes and the memories of Sydney versus the scenes and memories of what I saw, in Paris were very, very different. So I want other players to experience those feelings and emotions, because England have won 3 World Cups in football, rugby and cricket, 66, 2003 and 2019. Every single one of them has gone to extra time, and for some reason I believe that England should win more trophies. There's no divine right to do that, but I just feel that I would love this group of players, or the ones in Japan, who have been meeting each other in 10 years' time and talking about winning, not just for their clubs but for their country as well.
I speak to a lot of sports people, as you know, and it's amazing how many say the sport almost saved them, or the pitch is their comfort zone. That's where they're at the most comfortable, even if you're playing in front of millions. Yeah. And it was the same with you, wasn't it? You were sent off to public school. Yeah. You're a Shepherd's Bush lad. You had a massive trauma in the family when you lost your sister to the Marchioness disaster, and Wasps Rugby Club and rugby got their arm around you, didn't they? Yeah, they did. I don't want to be melodramatic about it, but it saved you.
Well, every person that plays in that kind of environment has to have a why. Why? What's your why? And for me, I mean, modern day rugby players grow up wanting to be rugby players, and that's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We've all got dreams and aspirations. I've got to tell you, to disappoint people, I didn't grow up thinking I was going to play rugby for England. I'm not disappointed by it, but it was never on my radar. If I was going to choose to play a sport, it may not have been rugby because it's quite hard. Yeah. And obviously my journey was a different one. It came into my life at a time when I really needed it, at the age of 16, dealing with lots of emotions of watching my parents bury their child and my sister. So it wasn't about money because it wasn't a professional game. It was about wanting to honour the memory of my sister, wanting to be part of a family, a team, a tribe, call it what you want. And it's probably the reason why I became very driven, and it can become quite powerful, quite strong, because it's to do with far more than just the game. It's about emotion, really, and pride and passion, really. And so, yeah, but every player has a different kind of why, and if you can connect the dots, if you can connect the whys together, it can become very powerful.
Talking about emotional connections, we're here at Stamford Bridge for lots of reasons, one of which is you're an absolute Chelsea nut. Here you are, your beloved Stamford Bridge. Yeah. The connection's strong with you.
Yeah, it is. I mean, listen, my father took me to Chelsea at the age of 8, and you either go in, I think you choose your team at around about 7 or 8 years old, and you can either go against your family or with them, and I went with them. And look, I mean, we couldn't win a raffle in the 80s, and it was a tough watch, but things have changed. The connection with the rugby is very interesting because a week after we won the World Cup, I was invited to be here to walk out with Clive Woodward, because he's also a Chelsea fan, yeah. And we were walking out in front of Chelsea and Man United. It was Chelsea Man United here, and Claudio Ranieri was the manager of Chelsea, and Alex Ferguson was the manager of Man United. And for the first time in my life, I understood what it must be like to play here, because the noise and every fan was on his feet because they'd all watched the Rugby World Cup final. It was only a week afterwards. I walked around the pitch with Clive holding the trophy.
Oh, you had the World Cup with you?
Yeah, we had the World Cup with him. It was
okay.
unbelievable. And I mean,
Right.
it's a bit of a super fan story, isn't it? Really, but it was amazing. And the only player from Man United that came over and broke up his warm-up was Rio Ferdinand. And he came over and he shook my hand and he shook Clive's hand. He said, "Well done, couldn't be prouder of you," whatever. All the Chelsea players were very different. Ranieri said to me, "Can you go and have a chat with them and give them some of the steel or whatever it is that you guys take, because we need it." And listen, it was an amazingly, it was just an incredible feeling, really. And I know what it must be like to be a football player, because we all want to be football players, really. And then when we realise we're not very good,
all rock stars,
and we catch, then we end up being rugby players. But ironically, it was won by a penalty. Frank Lampard, number 8. There you go.
There we go. Number 8. There we go. Good stuff, Lawrence. Always good to see you as always. And let's go and have a dinner.
Yeah, let's go.
Cheers.